And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Porter Stowell. He's here as the head of community for Filecoin, and we're going to get into one of the most important, most interesting, most hyped topics at the moment, which is DePIN. Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. Messari coined the category in 2022, probably because Filecoin created it and they needed a reason to talk about Filecoin and other projects that were starting to appear in and around the same space. So we're going to cover all of that today. We're going to do a Filecoin 101 and get more into what needs to happen for us to see wider use of decentralized physical infrastructure networks, compute, storage, etc. in the next few years. Porter, how you doing today, buddy?
Excellent. Excited to be on the show. It's been a long time coming. I feel honored to be here.
It has. We haven't done it yet, and I feel bad for that. It's probably my fault, but thank you very much for being part of this LinkedIn Live. Of course, it is LinkedIn Live, so those listening in, give us your GMs. Let us know where you're coming in from. Let us know where you are in the world. Have you worked on DePIN projects already? Have you worked with Filecoin already? Give us your stories, give us your experience, so we can try and tailor the content to you guys listening in. At the same time, if you have any questions for Porter, if you have any questions for me, do please feel free to add those in the comments below, and we'll try and get through as many of them as we can through the course of the show. With that being said, Porter, let's get into it. For those people who don't know and haven't come across you before, give us your brief introduction, give us your blockchain origin story. How did you find yourself in Web3?
Absolutely. Excited to be on the show. So my story starts back in 2017, where there was an upstart group within a company you may have heard of called IBM. You got to remember, 2017 was an interesting time, and IBM was frankly one of the best gigs in town if you wanted to work in blockchain and Web3. From there, I spent 5 years at IBM learning all things blockchain. Great school to learn about everything that was going on in the industry. And then I moved on to Coinbase, where Coinbase for just under a year, and then on to Filecoin, going full Web3 degen. And since joining Filecoin just 20 months ago, I've been the head of community that is responsible for managing the relationships and storage providers and DePIN infrastructure network that covers the globe, making sure that the community is empowered, educated, and building the future of Filecoin. That's my story.
Love that. Thank you for the introduction. I can relate to the early days of IBM, the promise, the use cases, the investment, the blockchain as a service offerings. And I think it's useful to come from some enterprise experience as you get gradually closer to the protocols, as you get gradually closer to the decentralized infrastructure part of Web3, because you're at least coming from a place where commercial viability is always something that's in front of your face, right? We don't get out of bed for anything less than a $10 million deal, or we don't get out of bed unless you can tell me how is this technology actually going to be used in practice. And I think that's a good ground school before you get into the deeper stuff. But do you miss IBM at all?
Not a lick. I think most people, when they truly work in Web3, there's no going back. It is addictive. The people are intoxicating. The amount of talent in this industry is unparalleled. And frankly, it's improving every day. I couldn't, like myself, and I think so many of the people I work with across Coinbase, even IBM, who've gone on to Web3, there's no going back.
I think so. But hopefully we bring a set of skills, experience, and real world knowledge with us that can help progress this technology meaningfully. And we'll get into some of that today for sure. For those people who haven't heard about Filecoin, it's a long story. Filecoin has been around longer than most people realize. So for those people who don't know about Filecoin or haven't heard or haven't touched base with Filecoin for a little while, give us the origin story, give us the 101.
So, Juan Bennett was the founder of Filecoin, if you will. And his story goes back to, I want to say 2013, where he created IPFS. And IPFS just had its 10-year anniversary. And that was really the origin story. So the TLDR on IPFS is just content identifiers to rewrite how you find things on the internet. And then ultimately, Filecoin was a derivation or an extension of IPFS, where you're taking that and providing decentralized storage for data using the internet as an incentive mechanism and blockchain as an incentive mechanism to match data clients and storage providers on the network. So this is a way to be trustless in a way that's different from your alternative solutions, such as the hyperscalers, such as AWS, Azure, GCP. These are undeniably an oligopoly that account for 60% of all cloud storage. And the decentralized mantra is that you should have freedom, control, choice, instead of having to participate in some of the walled gardens that are our public cloud. And so it's a lot of the philosophical nuggets that we see across all decentralized projects, specifically implemented for data storage and archival storage at that.
Got it. Nice introduction. And IPFS, for those people who don't know the acronym, I like this one, so run it back for us.
Interplanetary File System.
Interplanetary file system. Aiming for the moon beforehand.
But that's what's so great about the name and what Juan created 10 years ago, is that the vision was there. It was thinking space. It was thinking so big. And when you get to work around Juan Bennett as much as people in the Filecoin ecosystem do, you see how his brain works and how he's thinking 5 to 10 years ahead in a way that, frankly, not a lot of people are able to do.
I can relate to that. I mean, having had a chance to work now for two of the Ethereum founders in Gavin Wood and now Charles Hoskinson, the caliber of people, the caliber of thinking, the kind of eye-opening moments you get when you work with people like that, it's like, oh wow, and it's not thinking about the next quarter, or it's not thinking about the next deal, or it's not thinking about how do I make my budget targets this year. It's, don't worry, we're changing the world, and it's not going to happen in 12 months. We know it's going to happen in 5 years, but we can break it down. We can build it back to things we need to do now, things we need to do next. But in 5 years' time, we will have changed the world. And I find that super interesting. And that's part of the addictiveness of Web3 for me.
And it's a rare individual who can pull that off.
I think so. Not everyone is built that way. I'm not sure if you even build people or train people or kind of, I don't know if that can be coached, but it's super, super interesting. So IPFS was the foundation. Filecoin came out, and like much of the Web3 infrastructure that we see today, it's designed to be an alternative approach to something centralized, or it's designed to be an alternative approach that means that people don't get locked in to a single provider or don't have the risk of working for a single monopoly party or oligopoly party or something like that. So we're decentralizing, we're providing capability that in some cases already exists, right? So that storage capacity is provided by somebody. It's been built by an entity already, but we're freeing that up, we're sharing it, we're liberating it, we're optimizing for the infrastructure we already have.
And I'd add a little bit of this. When you look at the history of public cloud really came into fruition around, call it early days 2006. And for over 15 years, this has been an extremely US dominated phenomenon, public cloud, that has been monopolized by basically three players. And like, even when you go on the global scale, like there's just not a lot of people who can operate and be profitable at scale within public cloud. You got Huawei, Oracle's still there, IBM's still playing, but for the most part, there's three behemoths, and everyone knows that, specifically in the Western economies. Now you have a decentralized platform where it almost levels the playing field. Now Asia Pac, that was woefully behind in public cloud, has a means and a platform to compete on a larger scale in the bigger game. It allows entrepreneurs to come in and innovate in a way that they couldn't before. If you were a storage expert, your only option over the last 15 years was to work for a big tech. That was it. And now what we're seeing is all these entrepreneurs with the storage experience, with compute experience, going out on their own, building businesses, and they're going to be able to compete with big enterprise and these hyperscalers. Frankly, that just wasn't possible before the invention of all these DePIN networks.
And this is the part of the story that I really enjoy, is that there are actually proprietors, small business owners. I mean, not that small in many cases, but there are those who are running infrastructure, server farms, giant facilities in some cases, who said, you know what it is? I'm going to contribute that to specific cases. In some cases, they might be working with a university or a hospital, or they might be working with providing localized, low latency capacity to one particular industry or one particular organization. They say, well, actually, there's part of that capacity that I don't need, right? Or there's part of that capacity that I could earn a better return on if I used it differently. And this is about the flexibility or the optimization of infrastructure, right? But
yeah. And, there's no better example of those points than what's happening in GPUs at the moment. If you're looking for NVIDIA chips and, right now the wait time for just getting an order filled is, I want to say it's like 18 months. Don't quote me on the date, but it's a long out, long tail, maybe even 2 years. So unless you're Satya or Zuck, your order probably isn't going to get filled in the manner that you would hope it would for your business. But now you have GPU marketplaces saying, hey, we're going to pool together all the GPUs available from all these regional players that do have these chips available, and they're going to make that GPU available to you for your ML, AI ML use cases. And that is a major problem in the global economy right now. And you see this DePIN solution, GPU marketplaces, leading the charge. And right now, like a lot of the people within Filecoin are participating in these marketplaces. They're running close to 100% utilization on that compute when they make it available to those networks. 100% utilization is frankly crazy. And what I love about what's going on in decentralized compute is that, and these are like your renders, your Akashas. There's tons of new examples of compute marketplaces coming to fruition, that they are going to create the slipstream that all the rest of DePIN can fall into, Filecoin included. Once you normalize buying your compute from anywhere on the globe to meet your needs, that opens up the conversation for storage, for wireless, for energy, whatever it may require. You don't need a salesperson anymore. You don't need to know a guy. These decentralized marketplaces can get you what you need without having a third-party middleman.
I think that's really powerful. Normalizing democratization or normalizing on-demand services, getting to 100% utilization. I mean, you can imagine on the demand side, that one working quite nicely. On the supply side, if you've already invested in that infrastructure, really good. If you're looking to invest in infrastructure, then you've already got a backfill for your business case that says, if it doesn't work out with client A, or if it doesn't work out with my native capacity, or if I just need to secure some capacity for my business, but I'm going to sell off the spare, that's good news for optimization. That's good news for people being able to run viable technology. And if you wanted to stretch it out, you could talk about sustainability to some extent. I don't necessarily want to talk about having thousands and thousands of server farms being sustainable, right? I don't think that's the story at all. But having large server farms that are 20% capacity, but that still have to be always on, that's less sustainable, or that's less good news because you're not optimizing that capacity. Reality is, with AI, with Web3, with any number of different inventions we're going to see next, the requirement for compute and storage is only going up. So it's not, at some point, you're not going to not have enough capacity, but better to optimize now, and so you don't end up using unnecessary resources to backfill where you've actually still got slack capacity in the system somewhere.
So fun fact before we move forward, from the history of civilization, I want to say till 2003, all of civilization had created 5 exabytes of data. By 2010, they had doubled that amount. So it was 10 exabytes. Today, society is creating 329 exabytes of data a day. And this is before mainstream adoption of AI. Like,
okay,
the human brain is not capable in understanding exponential growth. It's just not. Linear growth, the brain does great. But we can't fathom the amount of data growth that's coming or that has even occurred. It is, one of the geniuses, the most amazing things about technology over the last 20 years is how it all seems so normal. But yet underneath the hood, there's been massive innovations and advancements to get us to this point.
And I think interestingly, on top of that, businesses plan in a linear way. They forecast and say, okay, it'll be next year plus inflation, or maybe we'll double next year, but probably not. So let's keep it calm. If those who were looking at capacity or those who were looking at infrastructure planning said, actually, in 3 years' time, we're going to need to 8x what we have today, you turn around and say, that's ridiculous. We're never going to have enough money for that. We're not going to have enough business for that. But actually, these are the models that we're in, and being able to decentralize and optimize the capacity allows more of that scaling to happen. If we have to do it linearly, like you said about the access to NVIDIA chips, if we are dependent on one large manufacturer to make enough production to make sure that capacity comes through for exponential growth, we've got a problem, because I'm pretty sure their production processes don't scale exponentially because they have physical infrastructure. Decentralizing existing physical infrastructure and optimizing what we have, there's the story.
Absolutely.
So talk us to us about supply and demand, right? Because there's two sides to this we've talked about, or we haven't explicitly lined it up, but obviously you've got those people who have hardware, GPUs, storage capacity, who, for whatever reason, and I'm interested in the origin story for some of them as well, they're sitting on these server farms, or they're sitting on this capacity that they have. And that's the sort of the supply side. You then got the demand side, which is, and I'm sure there are very many different categories of user here, which is people who are running artificial intelligence, people who are just running websites, people who are running heavily computational activity, might be research, might be academia, could be lots of different things. But there are various drivers for demand as well, and we've got to try and bring those things together. Give us the beginner's guide to managing supply and demand on DePIN, because I'm pretty sure that's kind of what you do every day, right? You're trying to understand the shortfalls, trying to manage capacity to some extent. Talk us through that from your perspective, because I find it fascinating.
Yeah. So with Filecoin, right or wrong, it started with supply. It optimized for supply on mainnet launch when it went live in 2020. Now, if you started with demand, you'd poke holes in, well, why didn't you do more in supply? And if you start with supply, you poke holes in, why didn't you do more in demand? But for right or wrong, Filecoin started with supply. And in a open and decentralized ecosystem, and specifically in my role where I work for the Filecoin Foundation, there is no control. It is a laissez-faire economy where market forces are ultimately going to drive behaviors. If there's too much supply, market forces will enact pressure. If there's too much demand, market forces will enact pressure for that supply to come online. And that's what we see. We've seen that through the entire history of Filecoin. We had way too much capacity in the last bull run. That has contracted. Our data onboarding, though, has been going up and to the right. So the organic story of data going onto the network has been steady and growing. But all we can do to manage supply and demand is what I call information liquidity. Now, in a more mature environment or marketplace, there will be multiple providers of information liquidity. Think of Wall Street, how many analyst reports, brokerage, CNBC. There's so much information out there in a very mature market about what's going on, how to act on that information that's being shared on a more regular basis. And so, all we can do is message what's going on, what's happening, what are the new clients coming onto the network, how big are those deals, what's the average contract for those deals, what's the value proposition of supply, what's your return on investment. And all you can do is, and these the inputs that determine the ROI of all these activities are changing daily. So all you can do is continuously message and engage the community so they can make economic, rational decisions based on their assets and expertise. That's it.
Simple as, right? I mean, it is a wonderful case study in kind of maybe even pre-MBA supply demand curves, is saying, right, we've got people who want to use compute or people who want to use storage. We have infrastructure providers who have computational capacity, people who have storage capacity. We need them to find each other. And for the most part, I mean, you call it information liquidity. I would often just call it marketing. but you're doing it in a decentralized way. So it's not saying, hey, I've got a bunch of product, I need people to buy my product. It's actually, there is a network here of participants. Those participants can be connected via a protocol. There is a peer-to-peer network through which the information can be exchanged and the value can be exchanged, or the data can be exchanged, the value can be exchanged. And this just works. And I guess if you go back to kind of 1980s business cases, you look at that and say, that's nuts. How could that ever possibly work? How could people trust each other? It would break. Surely the technology would go down one day, and who does customer service?
Right.
But yes, it works.
It works, but that's how Filecoin was set up. So for those of you who don't know how Filecoin works, is let's say Anthony has data he wants to store. Anthony doesn't know me. I am a storage provider on the Filecoin network. So what Filecoin does is to accept Anthony's storage deal, if you will, I have to pledge collateral to the network. So I will take Filecoin, put it in basically an escrow account that gives me enough stake in the game that Anthony has confidence that I am going to store his data for the duration of the contract. Mm-hmm. And if I do not behave as a trustworthy actor, I get slashed on that collateral. And when the
by
deal
slashed, you mean that my collateral is taken away, my deposit is lost.
Away. Yours is unaffected. You don't have collateral in the game. You don't, as a client, you actually don't even touch Filecoin. It's only the storage provider in this ecosystem that needs to touch Filecoin. And then once that contract is expired, we can extend it. You can take your data back, or it could just end. And once that ends, I can take my collateral back, and that's why it's like escrow. And that's how it works. But that's how it works in a decentralized ecosystem. Because you don't know, I am not AWS. AWS, you work with them because there's trust there. But every day the Filecoin is not, don't trust me, I'm going to verify. So I get a proof every day as a storage provider that Anthony's data is in the same state that it was given to me. And I prove that every day. It's called continuous proofs, or proof of space-time on Filecoin. And that to me is a real game changer. I came from a Web 2 world. And when I first joined Filecoin, I said, why do you need continuous proofs? This seems like a waste of resources and pretty expensive. But then over time, it dawned on me, which is we're all transitioning into this digital asset economy. And you see this with NFTs. NFTs are a digital asset that is almost meant to capture value, and that value can be exchanged. That was the nexus of NFTs. And even with Bitcoin, if Bitcoin is compromised, the value of your Bitcoin goes to zero tomorrow. And just like with any digital asset, if that digital asset is compromised in any way, the value of that asset goes to zero. So now Filecoin's in a really unique position for the growth of Web3. We're the only mechanism out there for continuous proofs and verification of your data is in its current state. Now, that may not be an important topic to you now, but you see these AI marketplaces coming on, these LLMs being created. People are beginning to buy data, and having that quality assurance about your data is in the state that you anticipate becomes extremely valuable. You see this in medical research all the time. It's called the replication crisis. So how do you know, one variable, one number is changed in source data? A researcher may come to a completely different outcome than the original researcher. So again, Filecoin is a way to validate or verify that this is, I have proof that the data is in the state I anticipate.
And the integrity of that data, the proof of storage, at a basic level, it's like, I'm paying for this, please confirm you still have it. It's like, you can get an NFT of a Lamborghini and say, right, I own this Lamborghini. My NFT on my phone says I have it. Here's the NFT that proves I have a Lamborghini. It's like, where is the Lamborghini? What state is the Lamborghini in? Has it been serviced? Does it still have wheels? Does the engine run? All of the kind of concerns with the physical world, it gets more complicated. But even in the digital world, you want to say, okay, I've backed up my entire. Let's take a mundane use case. I've backed up my entire repository of my children's photos. I don't want to lose them. I don't have enough capacity on my laptop to store them, or at least I want to have a store somewhere else where those things are kept. How do I know they're still there? How do I know that they haven't been corrupted? How do I know that there isn't a problem? And you can probably expand that out then into replication, saying, okay, well, I'm not just going to trust one provider. I'm going to make sure that it's across multiple providers. And I'm sure there's probably even an optimization for that says you don't have to have 3 times providers to get sufficient replication to be able to bring back enough of your storage, right? It probably gets very clever when you get into some of the algorithms.
Yeah. And, again, that could be a bit of a stretch thinking about family photos for people to get this concept. But let's take security footage as an example, CCTV. These are large files that frankly need to be held for a long time. Because basically what happens is, most security footage, they'll hold it for 30 days and then probably most of it gets deleted. But, there's that 0.01% where there's a massive lawsuit where you need to go access that footage. Now you're bringing that footage to a court of law. And what are you showing up with? Like when you store that footage on Filecoin, you're showing up with some good ammunition for that fight. What is the ammunition? You have continuous proofs that show that the data is in its original state and hasn't been tampered with, and it wasn't owned by a single entity where that could have been compromised. Again, AWS, Google, Azure, that is one organization, which frankly could theoretically alter that data if there was a reason to. And or change it, version it, whatever. And that's where, court systems really appreciate what Filecoin delivers because it's neutral, it's decentralized with the continuous proofs that hold up in a court of law.
Love that. Let's talk on some other use cases too, because I get that one, right? The integrity of data, the persistence of that data, and the potential value of it when it comes around. There's a whole bunch of data on the internet today that we're creating that has absolutely no value whatsoever, right? We do not need to save all of the pictures of cats that have gone onto the Twitter for eternity. I mean, some of them, maybe they're quite funny, but not all of them. What are some of the other use cases that you talk about or where you've looked at and think, oh, wow, that's really important, or that really matters. I'm really glad we're doing that.
Yeah. So one of our biggest data clients in the network is CERN Research, particle acceleration. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. And again, this is my own interpretation of CERN, but you have these researchers and they're doing this scientific work that is trying to push the boundaries of humanity. And this is their life's work. I couldn't imagine what it must be like to be forced with an economic decision where some administrator tells you, I'm sorry, but you need to delete some data. To a researcher where this is their passion project, all that data is essential. And, if AWS is your only option and those bills get extremely high, you're going to be forced to orphan one of your children, if you will. And I can empathize with that decision and being confronted with that. This is my life's work. This is my legacy. I'm trying to move humanity forward. I need to save all this data. And I need to make sure it's distributed, decentralized, and provable, replicated for future generations. And, you got to understand, CERN generates 1 petabyte of data a day. I don't think any organization, there's not a lot of organizations on the planet that generate 1 petabyte of data a day that needs to be stored.
All right. While we're here, right, we've had exabytes, we've had petabytes. For those non-mathematically inclined listening in, or for those who don't work in storage or compute, help us understand relatively a gigabyte versus a petabyte versus an exabyte.
Uh,
I think everybody probably has a relative feel for what a gigabyte is. Right? They had an external hard drive once upon a time that probably had a gigabyte, and they could put some movies on there. How does it scale?
all right. So let's take a petabyte. So, and an exabyte is 1,000 petabytes. 1 petabyte worth of data is equal to taking 4,000 digital photos every day for the rest of your life.
That's viable for me. That's probably I have kids. That's going to happen.
Yeah. And like, there's a lot of great examples that will help you conceptualize. Some people people are familiar with megabits, gigabits, sure.
But the 1,000 to go from, so peta, which just kind of derives from 5, I guess, and exo, which I guess derives from 10. But to go from 5 to 10 is 1,000 times.
Yep.
How's that work?
I mean, I can't honestly, I can't fathom truly an exabyte of data. And it's like there's I've seen visual examples of using like pallets on a football field.
Of iPhones?
And it's just, it's so, it's too hard to conceptualize an exabyte of data. Like, I struggle with it. And I've been doing this for a while.
Got it. So a petabyte is 4,000 photos a day for the rest of your life, which is a lot of photos.
Yeah.
And an exabyte
gets you to 1 exabyte. I mean, 1 petabyte. Sorry.
Got it. And to contextualize that maybe a little bit, so some of the deals, we'll call them deals that you get involved with, some of the storage agreements for storage providers. CERN, that you said they're doing a petabyte a day.
Yep.
What does a deal look like for these guys then? So obviously they're looking at having very many days worth of data being stored. Are all deals a petabyte or above? Are there deals in the exabyte levels?
Yeah. So, when you're in a decentralized ecosystem, I mean, all personas are on the table. The largest research institutions like CERN to individuals and cat photos. Like, if cat photos are important to you, you can store cat photos on the network.
I do love them, and I might try it, but for the moment, let's stay with CERN.
Yeah, and there's specific organizations within the ecosystem that are driving these deals. The foundation has no stake or control over what deals get executed. We help where we can if we're asked to help, but again, this is the laissez-faire economy. Everyone is free to pursue the deals that they wish to pursue and the size they wish to pursue them.
Your role is as a facilitator or as a knowledge information broker to help kind of, I don't say grease the wheels because that's always a seedy analogy for me, but just to help parties find each other and continue to have success.
Yeah, and like when you look at a deal like CERN, there's multiple components that you need to make that deal work. There's other storage providers that are going to have to store copies of the data because it's just not one copy. You're going to need collateral or lending, if you will, to have enough pledge available to support that type of deal. And what's great about Filecoin and how it's evolved is now we have all these niche specialty expert players doing multiple things within the ecosystem. So, you're never going to get a jack of all trades. Yeah, they exist, but like, I need expertise in this one specific thing that's going to help me facilitate what I'm trying to accomplish. And we get more and more players every day with that niche expertise. That's really, and this is why I get so geeked out about Filecoin, because once you get to feature parity with the hyperscalers, that open ecosystem of innovation, I don't think a private organization can keep pace with the rate and pace and openness of innovation that can generate in our ecosystem. And then I almost feel like it's game over once you that's where the AWS flippening happens.
I like that, and the way you phrase it is perfect. It's feature comparable. It's saying it's probably quite easy to use AWS today, right? 3 clicks and you've got a terabyte of data, and you can go put your cat pictures there. Whereas with I mean, you were saying there are some niche players who probably pop up. I'm assuming, but please correct me, that movement of certain types of data, compression of certain types of data, the compatibility of certain data with certain storage, movement of that data, and secure movement of that data if it's sensitive. I guess there's a whole bunch of complexity around that, which is where some of these intermediaries kind of pop up.
Yeah, and then it goes back to laissez-faire, where the market will determine, not a partnership agreement, on what the best option is for solving a problem.
And so are we seeing consortia? This is the art of the deal, right? So let's go to the art of the deal, because this is the full disclosure, we don't have any commercial secrets here. We don't want to share anything here that is out of school, but I'm interested in how these things occur, how you coalesce parties of, you've talked that there's basic supply and demand. I have lots and lots of petabytes of data I need to store. I have storage and I want to earn rewards on it. But you said, there are some guys in the middle. It's saying, are there deals made where some of the intermediaries are providing compression or bandwidth, right? I mean, the common view for people is, I need to upload or download something, therefore I connect to the Wi-Fi, but I'm pretty sure you don't move a petabyte of data over the Wi-Fi, for example, right? And so, at least not with Portuguese Wi-Fi that I have out here. So there are complexities there that, do these guys form consortium to kind of figure it all out together and then share commercial parts? How does it work?
It's a puzzle. I feel like I have an aerial view, from a plane, where I'm looking down with my binoculars, and the whole landscape is covered in clouds. So there's holes in the clouds and I can see what's going on. But I would say there's people, it's the most simplistic view, where there's people doing sales. Like, some organizations only do sales. And they're saying, I'm finding customers, and I'm going to be their data storage service provider. And I'm going to, I'm going to use Filecoin for archival, and I may use, Wasabi for hot storage or something else. But they own the deal. And then from there, it's like, okay, how do I get that data abstracted from, all the complexity abstracted from the client onto the network? So, there's software providers. Software providers, give that that user interface where the client can interact, they can encrypt, they can key manage, they can drop it into an S3 bucket, very common tool for moving data around, and just have that start the process. And then from there, there's data movement services. They call them BGP networks, which are basically an interstate system for moving data around globally. Then you kind of have these last mile initiatives to move from a hub to a spoke, which is the actual data center. The data centers usually handle all the bandwidth requirements to get that last mile efficient with good throughput. And then you have service providers around that may do orchestration software or orchestration layers. You have compute, people are providing compute just to put data onto the network. It does require compute to seal data on the network. Sealing is the act of putting data onto the Filecoin blockchain. And, again, how it works is sometimes people within, these roles within the ecosystem have very specific players they want to work with because of SLA, because of reputation, because of professionalism. Other times there are platforms that automate this, where, I have a storage deal and I just need to allocate it to people who have a certain responsiveness score with, this amount of capacity. Sometimes there are automated services coming up all the time that help facilitate that movement. So sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's automation, sometimes it's a mixture of both. It all depends on the situation, the relationships, but for the most part, it's manual. Filecoin is still a good degree manual at this point and through relationships, but every month there's some automation or orchestration coming in that automates the process a little further. And before you know it, where I think this ends up is the biggest data client going forward is going to be machines. and those machines will algorithmically store and archive their own data. And they're just going to go full automation on and just like, here are my requirements, here are my specs. Give me the cheapest options in these regions, and it's all automated.
And this is another useful analogy of what do we mean in Web3 by the use of tooling, or the absence of tooling, or the lack of availability of tooling. When you describe the process of moving data from one place to another, it sounded a little bit like moving house. Right? Anybody who's ever moved house, right? You try and arrange the van, and maybe you get some people to help you pack. You need to get the boxes, you need to sellotape stuff up, you need to label it, you need to put it on the back of the truck, then you need to drive with it somewhere. Maybe it has to go through customs, they have to do something, and then you get the point. It's not simple and turnkey. There's very many parts to it and very many parties to it. If you're moving internationally, you might have a shipper, or it may travel over the ocean. So you might need to be in a container. You may need to break bulk with that container and share it with others, whatever it might be, right? So even the movement of data is complicated. But what you're saying is that as we progress, more of those parts of the value chain, which you can very clearly break down, you did it very nicely, even from your position lofty up in the clouds looking through, the different stages in a process from initiation to completion. Each step of those, I imagine where things are centralized, or where you AWS or GCP, you have those stages workflowed to death, self-served to death, automated to death, with a credit card, blah, 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 blah. Right? That has matured because a single party is creating the journeys. In the case of Filecoin, or in the more of this decentralized model, the laissez-faire market kind of creates maybe centers of gravity around where the most value is. And then there's bits in the middle that are probably lower value, but absolutely necessary, that may be less efficient or less fast or less easy to use, just because that's a crappy part of the business and nobody really wants to be there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what we typically see in Filecoin, at least, is someone comes up with their own version of the golden path. What is the most efficient, cost-effective, value-enhancing way to go end to end? And then the way the ecosystem's designed, almost, it's not designed, but how it operates is maximum composability. So now you can have any part of that value chain or golden process switch out with another provider. Like, oh, I don't want to use them. I want to use this other people because they have a better fit for my needs. And so at each of these major categories along that movement cycle, you get everyone's building for composability. And like, now you're having ultimate choice. And that's what makes the laissez-fairness possible, because there's no authority saying, no, you must stick to the golden path. It's definitely not the foundation. No one has that authority. And that's what makes it exciting. And, if you feel like you have the best service, you will do very well within Filecoin.
Very interesting. And again, that's part of the ecosystem approach of Web3, is that without some of those intermediaries, let's not call them intermediaries, but some of those service providers, the system doesn't work as well, or the deals don't flow as quickly, or it becomes harder to attract certain types of customer or user because the experience is difficult. Like people trying to build on Ethereum 5-6 years ago. It was hard, it was clunky, there weren't that many easily plug-inable tools, there weren't libraries of existing reusable patterns that were there, we didn't have scaling solutions, we didn't have a way around managing gas that we do to some extent with L2s today. These are problems that we've solved over time. The internet had a checkout with a credit card back in 96. Yeah, we kind of figured that one out because that's as hard as it needed to be, because we could figure it out in a different way. Whereas an ecosystem-led approach can be massively more scalable, but the intermediaries in the user experience and the tooling is something that has to catch up to make it comparable, or feature comparable, shall we say, with the next best alternative today.
I do want to, you brought up a point, and I do want to issue a correction. It's not that Filecoin needs feature parity, because feature parity is features are something you present to the customer. Where Filecoin needs parity is process parity. As you said, like AWS has processed this to death, maximum efficiency, 6 Sigma across the board. That's where we need to get the parity, and that's where if we can get to that level, which is a bold and audacious goal in a decentralized ecosystem, then I think that's where I think it's truly like, game over.
Love that. Yep. Okay. I take back my previous statement of feature parity, which I took from you. So
yeah, I know. That's why I issued the correction. But we're learning on the call. I hadn't thought about that. Feature parity is just such a common term that we use, but it's not. It's process parity.
Yeah. If you're trying to be like for like but cheaper, that's only going to take you a certain way. Whereas I think we've already covered that the actual ecosystem and scalability approach of what Filecoin or DePIN networks offer is very different. And so it's not about being the same but cheaper. It's about being different and better, but usable, I guess.
Yeah.
While we're still on the art of the deal, maybe a quick fire round. What is the shortest and what is the longest deal you've seen come into fruition in terms of time scale to complete?
Again, you could be an individual user. Click, click, click. Done
in a day. Done in a minute. Done in an hour.
Again, you're using software vendors within our ecosystem that align. Their target audience is the persona that you represent.
The cat picture guy.
Yeah, cat picture guy. But we also have enterprises coming into the space all the time, varying sales cycle. So there was a fully digital deal done that went end to end. And I want to say 3 weeks from, hey, I'm interested in this to data's moving, contract signed, data's moving. So I thought that was really good because, it's, the restriction there is people's time, not the technology. It's like,
it's still a commercial deal. So there's still lawyers and contracts and money and
just hey, can we do this our follow-up meeting next Thursday? Those are the big delays to those types of deals, but still end-to-end 3 weeks is pretty remarkable for a sizable enterprise making that type of investment.
Nice.
Longer deals, you do see 9 months, 12 month sales cycles because you're going, bigger fish are more enterprisey where, Web3, in describing the solution you're offering is filled with pitfalls. And, my experience describing Filecoin to businesses, I feel like I'm in a game, like the game show Wipeout, where I'm doing this crazy obstacle course. And if I say the wrong thing at the wrong time, I get the boxing glove comes out of the wall and punches me in the face. And so you learn how to talk about this and avoid the pitfalls along the way. And the best sellers know, how to talk about it, what words to use, what to avoid, but it's really just short and sweet. And typically what you see people use is control. Control is a big one. Proof of space-time is another big one, the continuous proofs. And then, cost does play a role, but it's never something you want to lead with. So, and then, all of a sudden you say coin to the wrong person, it's over.
It's kind of hard when the product is called Filecoin. I wonder how much, I think a rebrand is impossible at this stage, but it does probably create some tension from time to time.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Filecoin is for storage providers and is the incentive layer for storage provider and is a mechanism to incentivize this storage deal making. But frankly, the customer does not need to touch it. They don't need to know about it. All they know is, hey, would you like an option where you have complete control over your data that gives you continuous proofs every day that you can move to any location at any point across the globe without major penalty or friction?
I'll have some of that. That sounds compelling. I like that.
And that's all they need to know. So I almost think of it when you join a company, they say, would you like a 401k? Of course, you're going to say yes. But the best companies say, we're just going to start you at a 4%. They automatically put you at 4% of your salary allocated to your 401k. and it's up to you to opt out. And when you look at the people selling Filecoin to enterprises, if you will, a lot of them are like, I wouldn't say adopting this approach, but they're very close to adopting this approach, which is I offer you all sorts of hot, warm, cold storage because I'm servicing your data challenges. But for this archival part, I'm giving you what I think is the best option. You can absolutely opt into whatever option is going to work best for you. But if you don't choose anything, which a lot of people don't, because frankly, not a lot of people care about archival storage, we're going to put it on Filecoin because it has all these benefits and it's the best value for what you're trying to accomplish. But if you need to choose AWS Glacier, go right ahead.
Interesting. And I mean, the other point there is when people are, and people, right? It depends which people it is. These are salespeople. Eventually, it might be systems integrators like an IBM or an Accenture or whoever else. I don't know. Maybe that's a follow-on question, but they're not selling Filecoin. They're selling storage. They're selling compute, and the branding opportunity there. I mean, it's not branded Filecoin. Like you said, Filecoin is for storage providers. This is the incentive network and the peer-to-peer design for storage and managing that in a trusted and automated way with proofs embedded in it. That's the protocol. That's what protocols do. They follow things and they do things automatically. The branding front end of it is saying, actually, hey, I've got another solution for you that isn't Google, but we don't have a name for it. Or it's not Filecoin because you're not buying Filecoin. We're enabling storage and archival services for you. The mind boggles on that one, because then you're just basically creating a brandless or a headless capacity, where technology companies for the longest time have been trusting or encouraging you to trust in the names of their brands. Whereas in a decentralized world, it's the opposite. It's saying there's no brand here. There's capability, there's technology. We can demonstrate it, we can verify it, we can prove it.
And
you don't have to trust in the brand.
Flexibility and control. So what you're going to see in Filecoin specifically as well over the next year is a lot of software platforms are going to offer a single pane of glass. And it will be Web 2, Web 3, and they'll have, frankly, every option under the sun. And you can customize it, move it with minimal, it'll all be abstracted away from the customer. So, and that's become, if you're a system integrator, Accenture, Deloitte, IBM, that becomes really compelling, because now you get one platform that allows you to, even if you just use it for managing across Web 2, you can go all the Web 2 services, because it's all just, an integration plugin, but then it exposes you to all the Web 3 services. So you can almost future-proof what you need to do based on the situation. But as a system integrator, you have the clients, you want to keep them, you want them to use you. You can white label these single pane of glass tools and get all the best of Web 2 and Web 3 in one plane. And I do think like Filecoin has a lot of people in software building that capability. You're going to see releases over the next year, which are going to be super exciting. But again, it's like that Web 2.5 bridge, where, again, I use a Bitcoin analogy because, Bitcoin analogy was, hey, 1%. Can you do 1% of your net worth in Bitcoin? So why would it be any different than with decentralized storage? You have all this data that you're storing. Wouldn't you want to at least try some percentage of your archival data in this decentralized ecosystem that gives you continuous proofs, ultimate control and flexibility, content identifiers? So you know what you're getting. And like I can prove to you on a daily basis that your data is intact. And again, you might just, how do you get people to dip the toe into that? And that's where Web 2.5 and these software platforms become really compelling. Love that.
And something that, we've talked about this together. I've talked about this on other shows, the SaaSification, or the software as a service, infrastructure as a service, the assification of technology. I don't know if that's
that term? Trademark?
I'm like,
right here.
Yeah. I can imagine the t-shirts now. The ability to provide the easy, clickable three clicks to something around storage, around compute, around energy, around communication, that fits with a direct to customer or direct or B2B sales team that is offering multiple services. That's where this scales. It doesn't scale very well one deal at a time or person to person to person. The obfuscation of that complexity, even if you're still using multiple providers, the obfuscation of that into a single, I want it, I'm going to pay for it, here it is, and then fulfillment. Right? When you get, like you said, to that process parity, even then to sales parity with the majors, I think that's probably what unlocks the wider scaling of DePIN.
100%. And
that's what we've got to work
we've
towards.
gone 55 minutes, Anthony. And I think we've barely mentioned AI.
We haven't. Maybe we're going to have to do another show. Porter Stowell does AI.
Awesome. Well,
but I mean, you lined up the point, which was saying as soon as machines can start procuring and funding and enacting their will on an automated protocol or an available open protocol, that's when things can start moving a lot faster. One deal at a time just becomes automated agents that have the ability to pay for things can do exactly this, and they will choose the path of least resistance or the optimal configuration for what they need. And if that's a decentralized solution, they'll go there.
Yeah, and a machine isn't going to call up its GCP rep and go, what's up with these contract changes?
Definitely not. And so another great use case for the...
Shout out to Arthur Hayes for that nugget. It's not mine.
There you go. Another confirmation that the acidification of the world is required sooner rather than later.
I'm waiting for the t-shirt. This has to happen at this point.
I'm on it. Porter, it's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. We are at time. We're 2 minutes to the hour. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge about Filecoin, about DePIN, around the art of the deal, around the size of bytes that are out there and helping to break it down in digestible cat-sized pictures. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe out there.
You got it. Cheers, Anthony.
See you soon.